The two main people that we hear from the most in the New Testament are the Apostle Paul and obviously Jesus Christ. And nothing that Paul writes contradicts the words of Jesus. So as we study Luke chapter 6 today, I am also reminded that something that Paul says back in 2 Corinthians chapter 13. Paul says in that chapter that we are to examine ourselves to see whether we are in the faith or not. And when we look here in Luke chapter 6, we see that Jesus tells us to remove the plank from our own eye before we can help someone with the speck that's in theirs. And then he says this about our fruit. He says, what we produce reveals what's in us. And it's exactly what we should be examining when we examine ourselves. So let's read together, starting in verse 43 and going through verse 45 of Luke chapter 6. It says this: a good tree doesn't produce bad fruit. On the other hand, a bad tree doesn't produce good fruit. For each tree is known by its fruit. Figs aren't gathered from thorn bushes, or grapes picked from a bramble bush. A good man produces good out of the good storeroom of his heart. An evil man produces evil out of the evil storeroom. For his mouth speaks from the overflow of his heart. So the question is, what kind of fruit are you producing in your relationships at work? What are you producing in your relationships at home? What about at church? What about your relationships within the community? My challenge for you today is to examine your fruit. What relationships are you producing? And if that fruit is not good, then it's time to make some changes in your life. God has called us as believers in Christ to be different, to bear fruit, to love when we are hated, and to give with no expectation of return. And in doing so, we point a desperate and hurting world to the one who made them and loves them and gave himself for them. Let's be about producing good fruit. Until tomorrow, be blessed and have a wonderful day.